out on the beauty. This is a Drayton Harbor oyster farm. In the middle of Drayton Harbor. There's White Rock. There's the beach. This is Steve Seymour and Jeff Menzies.
No labor.
Couple of oyster farmers. So what do you have to do before you can pick them? Because most of the time, if you plant a garden, you have to plant the seeds first,
you
right?
Feed them.
Yeah. You got to buy the seeds. These are farmed. So as an oyster farmer, you buy the seed. And so there are hatcheries. You guys may go to see some hatcheries. I'm not sure how pretty that is. But you buy seed, and when you buy it, it's basically a little single. These oysters were little single oysters about the size of your pinky when we bought them. Last time we bought 50,000 little oysters, which is very, very small scale. This is a small farm, but we bought 50,000 oysters, and we put them inside these bags. See this bag here? And the little babies, they go inside this bag, and at that time the bag is about this big around. As you can see now, after 9 months, those oysters all grow, and we're able to pull them out of the
Here, we'll move in on that bag.
Out of the bag now, and that's what we're doing. Is we're actually these were put out in June of last year. So they put out in the summertime.
Okay.
And so they've been out there for about 9 months or so, and we pull that whole line up. It's a 150-foot long line. We pull it up.
We'll go see that in a bit.
Yeah, we'll see that in a bit. Right here. And then we have to go through and sort through all these, because then we sell these to restaurants. So the way an oyster farmer makes money is he buys the seed, he rents the land or owns the land, plants the oyster seed out on the beds, harvests it, then has to sort it to different size and quality, and then you sell it to restaurants or you.
Why is Drayton Harbor a good place for an oyster?
Which means the weather doesn't get too rough. It can get pretty rough. It has a lot of what are called mud flats, or a lot of land that you can use to plant the seed on. It has a couple of streams that bring fresh water and bring nutrients into the bay, which helps feed the phytoplankton, which is what oysters filter. And so
you guys used to work together out here all the time.
I couldn't. Yeah.
Not all the time.
We did. We spent a lot of time out here.
We did. Here's the guy that got
So Steve, when and how did oyster farming begin in Drayton Harbor?
When?
Yeah.
I think it was really around the turn of the century. Exactly. I've been involved up here since the 80s, and before that I knew the fellows who had it during the 70s and the early 80s. I got involved because I worked with a couple of Canadian partners on it back in the 80s. I'm working oysters.
And it was a commercial venture then, right?
It was a commercial venture.
Private commercial venture.
You bet.
And so what happened? Because can't harvest year-round anymore, can you?
No, they downgraded the bay because the water quality seemed to get good. So now we're restricted to what? 6 months? 7 months? What is it?
The bay is closed for 4 months of the year during the wet season.
So it's closed for 4 months. So
it's closed.
We don't harvest during the winter time.
November, December, January, February, the harbor's closed. And that's mostly because that's when the watershed, which is the whole area that drains into Drayton Harbor.
Let's look at the watershed. Everywhere you can see.
It's Georgetown Baker.
That's the Drayton Harbor watershed.
It's 30,000 acres or something.
Farms up there, California and Dakota Creek sub-watersheds. There's the city of Blaine, urban part of the watershed, and Boundary Bay. There's White Rock, Semiahmoo Spit, far as the eye can see.
So basically, when they figure out whether you can harvest oysters from a shellfish growing area like this, they're checking the levels of poop. And the scientific name for that is fecal coliform bacteria. And if those levels are too high, then it's unsafe to harvest. And that's what happens here is during the wet season, those levels are too high, and that means that there can be other things in the water that can make you sick. And so that's the biggest problem with Drayton Harbor, is that it's closed for much of the year. It should be open.
These are triploid oysters. I don't know if Jeff told you that.
No, what does that mean?
Well, oysters typically will get spawny in the summertime. They get ready to lay their eggs and produce gametes so they can reproduce. And it's driven by temperature. So as the water warms up, these oysters will typically start to build gametes, so they lose some of their flavor. Now these are triploids, so during the early part of their hatchery life, these were raised in a hatchery initially. they treat the oysters, I believe, with temperature. At least they used to when I was working in that field. With temperature shocks.
Temperature.
Well, that's what it was back then. They may do something different. But it gives these guys an extra set of chromosomes. So they become triploid versus a diploid, which means normally they'd have 2 sets of chromosomes. So the triploid part of these means that they're no longer able to produce gametes.
So does that mean the triploid oysters cannot reproduce? Yo, here's that big
Look at
line.
this snake.
Big
It's
line.
a big oyster snake.
Or open this oyster.
Shucking the oyster.
Ready? Okay, so the oyster it's a bivalve, okay, and it has a flat shell and it has a rounded part of the shell. And you turn the cup side, you turn the cup down and the hinge is right here. This allows the shell to open. Okay, they use the muscle to open that shell so that they can feed. And they feed by filtering the phytoplankton out of the water. So we're going to get this knife right in this spot. And then we're going to just rock it up a little bit and we're going to slide the knife under here and cut that muscle so that this shell piece is gone. And then I usually turn it around and then so the muscle is right down in here and I'll cut that muscle.
Is that the adductor muscle?
That's the adductor muscle. Cut that. And we usually do a nice little roll. Just a lot of shuckers in restaurants do that little roll here to make it look nice and pretty.
See the gills now?
And then we can see in here, we've sort of twisted it around here, but there's a good example right there of the gills. These are the gills right here.
Kind of look like a fringe there.
There are the gills. And then if we go back to the edge, we kind of mangled the edge of it. But that fringe along the edge, it's kind of a brownish color right in there.
The mantle.
That's the mantle.
Secretes the
Yeah.
shell.
That secretes the shell. And then if we turn this over where I cut through, I cut right inside the oyster. And you can see the plankton, the algae that's inside the center of the gut.
So
of
the gills
oyster.
filter the algae and then it ends up in the gut. So what happens
Look
to
at that. That's pretty interesting.
to the bacteria and the bad stuff if the oysters get a hold of it?
Well, it ends up in the tissue. It ends up inside the meat of the oyster. Yeah, and so
That's how it could make you sick.
That's how it can make you sick. So this oyster is filtering these little guys. I'm not sure how much, but you hear reports of oysters filtering from 20 gallons to some bigger ones as much as
65.
65. I was going to say 50. 65 gallons of water a day. So they're little. They're actually like little water filter feeders.
Yeah.
They're cleansing our water. And so
Yeah.
if we're eating them, we have to make sure that the water that they're filtering is clean. And that's what an oyster farmer, so makes or breaks an oyster farmer, is that where he's growing his oysters, the water has to be clean. And hopefully it's clean 12 months of the year, so that he can grow those oysters and sell them throughout the entire season.
And so an oyster
Yeah.
farmer is actually making the water quality better.
Oysters make the water better, yeah, by filtering. They also make the water cleaner, and so it also makes it easier for light to penetrate down through the water.
So other things can grow.
So other things can grow, like eelgrass, for example,
Yeah.
and grasses. So a lot of folks now, what they're doing is they're actually planting oysters, not necessarily to use them for food, but they're planting them to make the water cleaner and clearer. And it's much nicer to look down through water and have it be clear, and to look at the grasses below and the crabs or whatever's on the bottom.
And then if you don't harvest, then you've got the shell down there for other things to grow on too, don't you?
Definitely. The shell or habitat for all kinds of little critters. And you can see that when you look at the work table here, and you look at everything that's brought up on these oysters that were even inside the bag. I mean, mostly what we see
A lot of mussels.
is a lot of
there.
mussels, which really aren't our great friend. But, you know, that's what happens when you're oyster farming and you're working in a natural environment like this, is that, and once they come off this table, they're all sprayed down again and they're bagged, and we put a tag on them that shows that they come from a bay that's safe. That's really important, because if you don't have that tag that tells you that it's a clean bay, you can't sell them, and you wouldn't want to sell them because you might make people sick. But that's a beautiful little Drayton oyster. What makes it pretty?
And what makes it a Drayton oyster? Is there some
Well, they're
specific
actually Pacific
characteristics?
oysters. This oyster is native to Japan. But every growing area thinks that they have the best oyster, of course. But a lot of other folks think that the Drayton oyster is one of the finest. In fact, You asked earlier about the history of oyster growing, and some of the first oysters grown in here were actually brought in here. They were East Coast oysters. They were brought into Drayton Harbor on trains, railroad, across the country. Little oysters about this, probably smaller than this, and they were planted in Drayton Harbor, and they were grown for like 3 months and then reharvested and sold in the market. And there's that old poem from the old Home Seekers edition of the Blaine Banner, the Blaine Journal then. And it said that the oyster beds on Jersey's coast have justly won a name, but we grow better flavored ones. Yes, sir, right here in Blaine. We're putting those bags June, so about 9 months ago, and then we just come through and lift those bags up and wash them down and sort them to size and get them to the market, and then the ones that aren't big enough will go back on the bottom.
Talk about some of the challenges of harvesting oysters here in Drayton Harbor, and what people can do to ensure that oysters can continue to be harvested here.
Well, the biggest problem here, like we're talking about, is the bacteria levels, or the amount of in essence, that comes from the watershed and from the city is too high for it to be safe to harvest. And so the best thing we can do is to make sure that, for example, if we have a boat and we have a holding tank on it, that we don't release our holding tank of waste into the water. If we live in the country and we have a septic system, we want to make sure that the septic system is working properly.
What about animals?
We've got livestock, cows. You got to make sure that they're taken care of properly. They're not given access to the streams, so that their poop basically doesn't make it into the streams and then make it into the harbor.
And if you live in the city, what about pets?
Well, pets, you can now, it seems like people have become very used to picking up their pet waste. So you can have animals in the city, but you should pick their waste up, because the city is most of it's been converted to concrete. So we don't have soil, which is a nice buffer. It's a good way to naturally control bacteria. We don't have that in the city. So in the city, when it rains, all that stuff is on the concrete, and it just goes down the gutters and right into the bay. So the best thing there is to try to pick up the poop, pick up your dog's poop. Yeah. And
What makes this a community oyster farm?
well, it's a community oyster farm because it was 10 years ago now. We started with a lot of the people that live around the bay, and we taught them how to grow oysters. They got involved in seeding oysters and harvesting oysters, and so the community's been very involved in trying to bring back the bay.
And this is actually a non-profit operation, isn't it?
It is. We sell oysters commercially, but it's a non-profit. It's done through the Puget Sound Restoration Fund. And really, in a bigger way, it's a community oyster farm because these tide flats, which are very, very unique, are really owned by all the people that live in the state of Virginia. So
we should all care. We have a
We all have a
responsibility.
responsibility to make sure that the water that's coming through here is clean enough so that it can be farmed, and so that also people can harvest native shellfish that are here too, clams. So
Right.
Tribes can harvest, people can go down and dig clams.
Out there on Semiahmoo Spit, the Nooksack tribe has customary harvest area, and the Lummi tribe and the Semiahmoo
Yeah.
First Nations used to harvest
They
here
used to
too.
harvest in this area. Yeah, they're now across the border in Canada.
Yeah.
So the shellfish harvest is for commercial purposes, tribal purposes, and
Recreational.
mom and dad's gonna-
All right, well, we better get back to work.
Put it to work, yeah.